Good morning, everybody. My name is Martin Hickerton. I'm an Associate Professor here at the University of Lincoln, and we're here today to talk about the Senior Leaders Master's Degree Apprenticeship, which is underpinned by the Masters in Business Administration Leadership Programme. And this is a broadcast for anybody who's interested in finding out more about the programme, how it might impact you as you study or your organisation. And this will be broadcast as well afterwards in terms of a recording. So don't worry if you want to pass this on to friends or you miss any part of it, it's not a problem. Joining me today is my colleague, Tracey White. Would you like to?
Good morning, everybody. My name's Tracey White, and I'm an Associate Professor in Learning Innovation here at Lincoln International Business School. I'm also the Programme Leader for the MBA Leadership and the Senior Leader Master's Degree Apprenticeship. And with us here today as well is Kimberley Vickers, who is one of my students on the MBA, and I'll just hand over to Kimberley.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My role is the Castle General Manager, and I'm part of the Cultural Management team for Lincolnshire County Council. And I'm here to offer you all a slightly different insight and perspective on being a learner on this course.
Thank you very much, Kimberley. Thank you very much, Tracey. I'll take you through the first part of the presentation, everybody, which is an overview of the programme. And then what I'll do is I'll bring in Tracey and we'll bring in Kimberley a little bit later on to give their views. Tracey will talk about the academic side and Kimberley will give a view as a student, which is, of course, really important. So, as we go through the presentation, you'll hear us talking about two things separately, but also together. So just to put that right out there at the beginning, the degree programme, which underpins the apprenticeship version of study, is called the MBA Leadership. And the MBA Leadership sits as a mid to senior level qualification in the business school. It's a full qualification and it sits alongside the SL MBA. And so what we're going to do today is talk about the MBA Leadership at Lincoln. We'll then talk about what is the Senior Leadership Master's Degree Apprenticeship, the SLMDA as it's actually known. And we'll talk about how apprenticeships work, because 95% of the people who study on this course do so as an apprentice. Now, you don't have to, but at the moment, it's probably the simplest way that people do it, the most effective way to do it. We'll talk about your suitability, eligibility, and next steps. And there will be opportunities for questions. So we want this to be interactive. If you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on YouTube and you're signed in on YouTube, you can post your questions. With us, but not visible at the moment, is our colleague Tars from the marketing team. And Tars will be able to flip across any questions so we can answer them for you. It might be that we say that will be picked up a little bit down the line, or if it's a really good, innovative question we've not had before, we always like those, we'll make sure we pick it up for you. But today's for information. It's so that you know that this might be the right thing for you or your organisation, and it also gives you all the information you need to make that informed decision. So you might be here thinking, yep, it's something I've always thought about, getting a qualification. We have a lot of people, particularly in Lincolnshire, who are really talented. They've been working in their career, they've cracked on since university or perhaps never been to university, and are now thinking, I'd like some qualifications to go with that experience that I've built up. Other people say to us, look, I've got a team or I work in HR. I know my employees would really value this. It would add a lot of credibility to their role. Other people may be here because they're thinking it might be good for their network. So we know people in professional bodies, and this is something we can launch in conjunction with professional bodies. And let's face it, at the moment, it's really unusual, strange times. I'm not going to use the word unprecedented, but of course it is unprecedented. Many people are at home, many people are working at home. Who knows when office life will return as usual. And so some people are turning their minds to blended learning, where they don't have to be full-time at college or university. And this is a brilliant course for bearing that in mind. It's designed to be blended. It's work-based. And what we will do is explain how that works with the digital aspects as well of learning. So the MBA, what is the MBA background? Well, it's a Master's in Business Administration. It's not a new thing. We've run this in Lincoln for over 20 years. But in 2017, the government announced apprenticeship levy money would be available for organisations. The apprenticeship levy was applied to all large businesses, but can be accessed by smaller organisations as well. And so for us, we looked at the new standard or the new framework, if you will, the Senior Leaders Master's Degree Apprenticeship Framework. And we said we could actually tailor our Masters in Business Administration to fit within this senior course. So it sounds a little bit counterintuitive to have apprenticeships who are general managers of the castle or chief executives of a charity, but that is indeed what we can now work with, which is great. So we didn't take the MBA. We didn't take the MBA and just make a change to it and shoehorn it into this new standard. Tracey and the team spent a lot of time rewriting it, taking it back to basics, building it up again, speaking to employers to understand exactly what it was they wanted, and it's been revamped. It's been rewritten and revamped. Now, we've had 3 cohorts already start on the SLMDA. We have around 50 live learners, and Kimberley is one of those, and it's been really, really popular. We were going to start in the spring, but with the COVID-19 situation, we held fire just whilst things settled down. But we are now looking to go live in the autumn. And just a note on this, we think it may be the last chance to take the MBA as an apprentice. So there's been a review from central government, and it looks as though from 2021, it's not going to be possible to have this route. We will still have the MBA at Lincoln, but probably not as an apprentice, which is quite important for people considering whether to start studying now. So let's just break it down and let's look at the 2 sides here. So the qualification in itself, on the left-hand side in the dark blue, the MBA leadership. So if you study the MBA leadership at the University of Lincoln, you will get a degree, a postgraduate degree. It's called the MBA leadership. And you will also get, because we've designed it in this way, a Chartered Managers Institute Level 7 diploma in strategic leadership and management. So there's a bit of a double whammy going on there already. And you also get option for Chartered Manager status. On completion, you'll be eligible for Chartered Fellow or Chartered Member. So all of these things come from studying via this route. Now, when we talk about the Senior Leaders Master's Degree Apprenticeship, the SLMDA, you'll see, and it's deliberately designed to mirror in the light blue, you also get the MBA leadership because that's what you study. You also get the CMI Level 7 diploma, the option for Chartered Manager status, eligibility for Chartered Fellow or Chartered Manager. But the key difference is, as an apprentice, you also have the apprenticeship itself. Now, we'll go into the details of what that means, but effectively, that's a wraparound method of study to study the MBA leadership degree. So as I mentioned at the beginning, you can study as a standalone student on this course for the MBA leadership, but most people choose to study it through the apprenticeship route, and that's because the funding is there, basically, and we'll talk about that funding a little bit later on. So at this point, I'm going to bring my colleague Tracey back in because this is the modular approach to the MBA leadership, and she'll take you through what it looks like.
Thank you, Martin. Okay, so it is an MBA leadership, and the design of the degree has a focus on leadership throughout. And what we've tried to do here is to bring in a really innovative design which enables people to develop as a leader over a period of time. So we start off the MBA with our first module, which is leading and developing people. And we start off with around 6 weeks of teaching. And then we take a break in that module. That module is still ongoing throughout the duration of the first year. But you leave having done 6 weeks of teaching on that module to move into a finance and management module, a marketing and stakeholder engagement module, and a strategy and practice module. But after the end of each of these modules, there is a session with the module leader, who coincidentally is the director of the business school, Dr. Craig Marsh, who is an expert in leadership. And he will look at these areas, so finance and management through the lens of leadership, marketing and stakeholder engagement through the lens of leadership, and strategy through the lens of leadership. And then when you've completed these 3 modules, you then pick up the leading and developing people for a further 4 weeks of that first year. So you can see how we solidly embed leadership throughout that first year. And then moving into the second year, we start with another leadership module, and that's leading across organizational networks, before moving into governance and risk, and then again picking up that leadership, leading organizational change. And then moving on to innovation and entrepreneurial thinking, which then takes you on to our negotiated learning project. Now, it's important to note a few things about the degree. Everything is designed to link in and to complement each other. So our innovation and entrepreneurial thinking module enables students to understand more about innovation and entrepreneurial and intrapreneurial thinking, and as an entrepreneur in their own organization, to scope out and plan a project for their organization which they can take into this negotiated learning project. Now, we don't actually teach research methods in this degree, but what we do have is we have a research methods framework which is available for the whole of the degree and which underpins the degree, and which students can undertake alongside their studies to familiarise themselves with research methods and research methodologies before they will take a bit more of a look in the innovation module and again in their negotiated learning project. So everything is designed to link in. And importantly, on the senior leader master's degree apprenticeship, this is about knowledge, skills and behaviours. So a standard has been set for the senior leaders master's degree around these areas of knowledge, skills and behaviours, and which the degree was derived from. So all of these areas are the content areas of the standard, and we developed it so that each piece of assessment starts to evidence knowledge and some skills and behaviours. And the senior leader master's degree has a differentiation point from the MBA. So once the MBA is completed, people will go into a period called Gateway before moving on to an endpoint assessment. And this is the apprenticeship side of things. So the endpoint assessment is comprised of two parts, 50% professional discussion and 50% professional showcase. Now, the professional discussion is around a portfolio of evidence built around the knowledge, skills and behaviours of all of these areas of the modules. So as a student or apprentice moves through the programme, simultaneously as attending to their assessment work for each module, they are building and developing a portfolio of evidence. All of the assessment is potentially viable for this portfolio, but it forms the foundation blocks, and students, as they move through their journey, build on their knowledge, build on their application in the workplace, developing their skills and their behaviours and building evidence into this portfolio. And we provide an electronic portfolio called OneFile to do this. And at the end of the degree, when they're put forward for endpoint assessment, you will have a professional discussion with an independent assessor around this portfolio of evidence. The other part of the endpoint assessment, the professional showcase, is based around a work-based project, which comes in at the end of the degree in terms of the negotiated learning project. And it's a report on that project, a presentation and a question and answer session. And we also build these elements into the assessment of the degree. So throughout the degree, we are trying to facilitate the development of all the necessary ingredients for the endpoint assessment. I think we have a question before I move on. Tars, did you want to pop that up? Okay, Marion, thank you. Yes, the IFA and the government are revising the Senior Leader Master's Degree Apprenticeship Standard currently. At the moment, we are allowed to run the standard as it is, and we can run that until any decisions have been finalised, which will be around November or December of this year. And we are anticipating that the changes will be that the requirement for a master's degree will be taken away from the standard, but we are permitted to continue to recruit to this standard, and any students who will be already on programme when these changes occur, it will not impact them at all. They will continue on the standard that they register to. I hope that answers your question. In terms of the design then of the MBA, it is a work-based degree. It's all about that work-based application of, you know, taking the learning, applying it, and we do that through critical action learning. And it's a really strong aspect of our programme. So on the first day of our programme, or the first module, students are helped to facilitate themselves into action learning sets. And they would be in that action learning set for the duration of their degree with other senior leaders from different types of organisations and with different skill set. And all of the way through the degree, activities, the whole design is based around critical action learning in their action learning sets, sharing experiences, sharing interpretations of knowledge and theory and how it's applied, and collectively and individually reflecting on different scenarios to move their learning, their knowledge, their skills, their application in the workplace on. So it's all about peer learning and a learning community, a community of practice of learners. And we have a very, very strong focus on a collective responsibility on the learner to engage in that idea of critical action learning and action learning sets. It's a really important and focal point of our degree, and it makes for a really strong learning experience. Student as producer, so all of our students are creating and co-creating new knowledge. And as I said before, that professional portfolio aimed to enabling a student to successfully achieve the elements of endpoint assessment. And also the Lincoln International Business School signs up to the Principles of Responsible Management Education, of which there are around 13 or so principles, of which are embedded into our programs. If you want any further information on the programs, on the design of the modules, or indeed any of that, we're happy to share that with you. So in terms of the learning and teaching delivery then, it is a blended and distance learning degree. Currently in the situation that we are facing, we are anticipating, at least for the short term and maybe into the midterm, we're not sure yet, that most of the provision will be online. Although as soon as we get government advice that it's safe to do things in a more blended way, we'll be doing that. Modules generally are of 15 credits and 10-week duration. The negotiated learning project is 24 weeks and is a 60 credit project, quite a substantial piece of work. And the first module, as I mentioned previously, is a little bit different as to its setup, but generally modules consist of 2 days face-to-face provision. We start off the programme for those people undertaking the Senior Leader Master's degree with a half-day induction on the degree apprenticeship. So we try and pass on as much information and share as much information on the degree apprenticeship as possible so that you can start your learning in earnest. We then have a full-day induction around equipping you with the tools and techniques for study before moving on to the induction for the module. However, as I said, a lot of this is going to be online, and of course we don't want you to be sitting rigidly in your chair for full days, so we'll be looking at how we can facilitate that a bit more easily for the next intake. And then we have 1 day induction per module and a midpoint review at week 5. So you under normal circumstances, you would expect to have a full day in week 1 and a full day in week 5. We will be replicating that model, but we will be mixing it up with some self-study and some group learning in those days. And then every other week of 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, there is a 2-hour weekly online teaching session. What that entails is when you attend your first session of the first module and you're got into your groups, your action learning set, from that day forward, you would be provided with a range of resources, journal articles, readings, perhaps videos, and a discussion topic. And in your particular action learning set, you would go on to the online discussion boards and have some discussion on what you've read, what you've learned, how it applies, how it doesn't. And that culminates the following week with the 2-hour online session with your tutor, where the action learning sets, they come together, they feedback on what they've been doing over the week, and so the discussion moves from there. You have your tutor support throughout each module, and there are a wealth of online learning resources which are on our virtual learning environment Blackboard. You would automatically get membership of the CMI and therefore would have a wealth of resources on Management Direct. You could also get yourself a CMI mentor from industry. We have things like lynda.com, we have all of our module handbooks, we have our research framework, we have all of our online reading, many resources which are building up continually due to the C-19 situation that we're in. And we also try to bring in guest lectures and discussions. We signpost to CMI events, and we try and share as much as we can with what's going on. And of course, they're guided learning activities for each week. In terms of the assessment then, we have two forms of a portfolio. We have the portfolio, which I've alluded to, which is related to the endpoint assessment, but we also have a portfolio approach to all of our modules. So that enables our tutors or our learners to produce a range of different learning artifacts for their assessment. Might be reports, case studies, reflective learning, projects, presentations. We try to make it as innovative, as interesting, as engaging as possible. And it's all about holistic development of the learning and understanding the knowledge and putting that theory into practice. How do you evidence that in the workplace, and then reflecting on things? All of our assessment activities are mapped to learning outcomes, so our learners can clearly see what they have to achieve in their assessment. And there's formative assessment ongoing, so the tutors will be providing formative feedback to critical action learning sets individually. We have a very open door policy, and our students do come and have conversations about assessment or about their learning, and even about issues they might be facing at work. And there's summative assessment at the end of each module of the portfolio. The only differentiation is the final project has 3 distinct elements, which is a project proposal, the actual project and report, and a presentation. And that mirrors the endpoint assessment. And then finally, at the end of it, you can expect to graduate at the wonderful cathedral in Lincoln, and the reception is at the castle, of which Kimberley Vickers is the manager, which is a good point, Martin, to bring you back in.
Thank you very much. And we'll be talking to Kimberley in just a moment, actually, about her experience. And we've had a question come in from Howard, which is, what support do you provide for students to help ensure their learning is understood and practically supported within their businesses? And what I propose, Howard, is if we continue the presentation, hopefully that will get picked up, but we'll refer that question on to Kimberley, and she can give you her real life view of that as we go. So what we're going to do now for the next part is we're going to talk through the actual apprenticeship process. So what we've said is that the SLMDA, the Senior Leaders Master's Degree Apprenticeship version of this course, is a full apprenticeship process. It's underpinned by the standard, which we discussed how it might be changing, but it is a standard nonetheless. And it's comprised of 4 stages. The 4 stages are enrolment, learning, gateway, which Tracey alluded to earlier, and then point assessment, which she covered in some detail. So just to make it absolutely clear, at this stage we're in enrolment. So this is really about seeing whether it's the right thing for you, right thing for the organisation, and it's making sure that the right people come onto the course. It's got to be the right thing at the right time. We have welcome sessions, we have information sessions, and you can ask as many questions as you like. The learning itself is typified by having regular visits with assessor or contact with an assessor. You have remote and face-to-face teaching, and 20% off the job training. Now, that's something we're going to major on in a moment in a bit more detail, but it's really key. Once that learning has been completed, you go through the gateway, and that's the discussion and the decision to make sure you're ready for that endpoint assessment, at which point is the portfolio and professional discussions. So just to put that in context, that's the full apprenticeship process. Some of you may have been apprentices previously or are currently apprentices. You'll recognise this is the same whether you're at level 3 or level 7 academically, but that's how it works. So you might be thinking at this stage, what is the requirement to be on the apprenticeship itself? Well, there are some requirements. A lot of people say, do I need to have a degree already? And that is not actually a requirement. But what we do need is a commitment from all of the people who are involved in the apprenticeship. So the apprentice needs to commit to attend and to study. The employer, importantly, needs to be fully involved in an apprenticeship. They need commitment to continue the wages, the salary as it is, time off to study within the working week, and that's critical. And the university, as you'll have found from Tracey, we're there to give the support and the guidance and the teaching, and that's our commitment. So all that comes together under an apprenticeship agreement. So with it being a government-led initiative, there is a lot of paperwork. Apologies about that. It's just the way it is. But we do have to make sure that's all in order. And we've got a brilliant admin team, Anna and Dawn. You may have met them, who will be on hand to help with those application processes and continuing support. Now that includes things like 20% tracking for the off-the-job training. It's an ILR, the individualised learner record. It's the agreement we have between all three parties. And also you need to have, as part of the SLMDA, a work-based mentor. Now that's not necessarily a line manager, but it's someone who can facilitate your journey, connect you with those topics you may not be so familiar with, and they are integral to supporting you through to successful completion. And in actual fact, we start to bring them in very early in the process. We even like to have them in on the interview that you'll have with Tracey, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on, or we can pick that between us a bit later on. And of course, you'll get support. So as an apprentice, we talked about the fact you are studying the SLMDA, which is broader than just the MBA itself. You will get full portfolio support. That's a key part of being an apprentice, is building that portfolio. Without your portfolio, you can't go through the gateway to the endpoint assessment. It's evidence all the way through of learning. People talk about the 20% off the job training. We're always keen to say, it's a bit of a cliche, but you don't need to spend one day a week sat in a broom office with your books on your lap. Like, you can do, that's not against the rules. But basically what we're saying is 20% of your working week should be given over to learning, training, development. And those things can be quite broad. So Tracey talked about the on-campus days, or the virtual learning days that are at the moment. That counts clearly. Talks, seminars, lectures, your critical action learning counts. It might be other things though. So it might be going to virtual conferences at the moment. It might be conversations with other departments to learn how they do things differently. If you don't work in finance, but you're speaking to a finance director or leading a finance meeting for the first time, that's learning. That can count. So this helpful graphic we use just to say there's lots of different ways to do it. It could be talking to other industries, conferencing, all the webinars, shadowing another member of staff. It's all learning. It's all good. It's all part of that 20% off the job training. Now, at this point, it's really timely to bring in Kimberley. So if you just bear with me, I'm going to bring Kimberley onto stream. Hi again, Kimberley.
Hi, Martin.
Now, we're all sitting here together, but this is over to you, really. And we wanted to leave it fairly unstructured. We're interested in your views. We're interested in what it's been like for you as a student and a learner and an apprentice. And if you could just take, say, 3, 4, 5 minutes to go through that. And then if there's any questions that come in, we'll throw them back to you. And I think we'll all stay online through to the end of the presentation to pick up any other questions that come through. So over to you.
That's great. Thank you. So yes, I'm sure everyone has their own individual motivations for watching this and considering the MBA leadership program. And I think you've already touched on it, Martin. For me, it was very much about the right timing. My experience, my career to date has kind of evolved from front of house roles through to duty managers, through to where I am now in a more senior role. And whilst there have been lots of opportunities for me within my own organisation, which I have taken, there wasn't really anything that was available at the time that would take me to the next level, or equip me with the knowledge, skills and behaviour to carry out a kind of senior role. Certainly that wouldn't cost a lot of money, or that wouldn't require taking a career break as well. So I think that's one of the real benefits of the apprenticeship programme, is that you can do this qualification alongside your current role. So it really aligned perfectly with my own career and the stage that I was at. And I think there was also another strand, talking quite frankly with you, where I think I was becoming aware that I wasn't making the best use of my free time either, and I wanted to kind of invest some time in something that was going to benefit me. But of course, one of the other things that is of massive value to this programme is to the employer and to the organisation. You know, the modules and the topics that we've covered today have really aligned with lots of organisation and business needs right now. We talk about a constantly changing environment, and this is particularly relevant to me in a local authority background, where you're required to kind of do more with less. But the modules were particularly relevant to that. So, you know, I think employers really have to acknowledge the potential performance benefit and individual motivations of employees as well, by taking part in this programme. I guess most people watching this are going to want to know, well, how do you do it? How is it possible? We don't have enough time on our hands already. How are you managing to do this? And I guess, being honest, that there's no kind of one size fits all approach to this. You do find your own way of managing it, and it is what works for you. My role requires me to be working incredibly flexibly. So there have been occasions where I haven't been able to watch an online session, for example, but they're recorded, so I've been able to catch up when I have had the time. Some of my peers are quite disciplined in the way that they allocate their time to this, and again, that works for their role and that works for them. I've certainly found that I have to be more creative with how I look at the 20% off the job training that you've talked about. And one thing that I found of significant value for me when it comes to writing up the assignments is to just book some time out, you know, the week before, so I know that that's it. That is the time that I'm going to assign to this. It's not easy. Why would it be? Learning is difficult. And I think when I first started, it was I felt a big bump trying to get to grips with the additional reading, trying to navigate the platforms that we use from a kind of technology perspective with Blackboard and OneFile. I still don't think I'm quite there, but you know, I know enough to get by at the minute. But you do really find your feet with it, and you do settle into a routine that works for you. And dare I say it, I think I'm enjoying, you know, the additional learning and the additional reading right now. And I think, you know, you've both talked about the support networks that are available for you, and they exist in a formal and informal capacity. You know, you have your course tutors, Tracey, the programme leader. We have our portfolio mentors and our work-based mentors as well. And it's also not forgetting the value of the community, Tracey, which you've touched on already, in terms of your peers and your cohorts, because, you know, they've been as equally supportive throughout this process as well, and learning from them too. You know, that's the great thing, is that you're on this journey with lots of different people from lots of different backgrounds, who each have their own kind of knowledge, skills, expertise, networks, and I think that's been such a valuable addition to this as well. And you know, it's really difficult, I guess, to say, well, what's been the added value, what's been the benefit of you doing this when we haven't completed the qualification yet, but the blended learning, that ability to be able to put the theory into practice, it's almost an organic approach to learning, really, when you're exposed to kind of the learning and the different theories, and you're able to kind of develop this kind of pick and mix approach to what works for you and the things that you're really drawn to. I think that's, you know, of massive value, and it's certainly solidified for me the kind of the leader that I am, the leader that I want to be, and it's been, you know, particularly relevant now as we're leading and navigating our way through a current crisis. So yeah, it's been a very rich, fulfilling, enjoyable experience, and, you know, really relevant, really pertinent for the challenges that our organisations and businesses are facing today. So I'll finish there and hand over to some questions if there are any.
That is brilliant, Kimberley. Thank you so much. And it's really always worthwhile, isn't it, hearing directly from a student on the course. Tracey, I'm not sure if you've got a question for Kimberley. I've got one, actually. I'm really interested in knowing what it's like working with different, you mentioned different people with different backgrounds being on your course. Can you give the audience maybe a sense of who else is on your cohort with you? Obviously, you're a Castle General Manager, which is quite an interesting role itself, but what are the other roles that people have?
Yeah, so I'm part of the first cohort that went through the programme. And we're quite a mixed bag. We've got some learners from Lincolnshire Police Force, the co-op, someone who works for the Scunthorpe Football Club, and a kind of independent private businesses as well. So very kind of diverse skill set within the cohort that I'm in.
And presumably that's quite an interesting mix to have, because there'll be things that are different, but things that are actually the same when you get to the heart of it for everybody. Yeah,
pretty much. I think we, and you kind of take comfort from that, actually, when you're going through this process. It's that those commonalities really kind of galvanise you and bring you together as a team as well.
Brilliant. And Tracey, do you have any questions for Kimberley to pose?
I do, yes. So Kimberley, everything we try and do in our work-based programs, our executive and particularly the MBA leadership, it's about developing our learners personally, professionally, and within their organisation, bringing tangible and intangible benefits. Is there some real impact that you've had within your organisation that's come around through one of your modules?
Yeah, it's always difficult, isn't it, to pinpoint exact moments where you've been able to take this. But I think for me, definitely the modules that have looked at the kind of collaboration and partnerships that are almost born out of, you know, external environments that we're in now, that kind of lead to you know, those things where we talk about being creative and innovative, and that's been something that has been so valuable to me and to my site. So for Lincoln Castle, who are always looking for new ways to engage with new audiences, being able to understand the value of and power of those collaborations and bring them together to produce really exciting and new content for the site has been particularly relevant. So, for example, last summer we pulled together a Vivian Westwood exhibition and exhibited that in our Victorian prison. You know, really fresh, exciting, contemporary content. And I would say, yeah, it's definitely been that awareness of collaborations and pulling in and working with different partners. That's certainly something that's been relevant to my role.
Fantastic, thank you.
Brilliant. And one last question, just referring back to Howard's point, which I think we have covered to some, but just to pin it down. Kimberley, how is your learning supported within your organisation? How do you make sure that it's not just textbook learning and that you are able to translate it into the real world?
Well, I think the relationship you have with your work-based mentor is really important. And like you said, Martin, that's not just about it being your line manager. It's about the kind of opportunities that they're able to open you up to within your organisation as well. And my work-based mentor has been enormously supportive and helpful in kind of opening up the doors and have discussions with people who are, who might be able to input and help with my portfolio or assignments or things like that. And actually, I think there's a pride as well. I certainly find that my organisation wants to talk about, the programme that I'm on, the learning experience that I'm on. They want to be able to demonstrate that they are investing in their employees, because it's like what I touched on initially. It is that motivation, isn't it? So I know that it was Apprenticeship Week a couple of weeks ago, and I was asked to write a case study, which is now available on our kind of intranet for Lincolnshire County Council. So yeah, there's definitely a pride about businesses that are investing in the professional development of their employees.
Particularly at the moment, I guess, when it's such difficult times for all organisations. Yes, if you can still invest, it really does help with employee engagement and a number of other things as well. That's brilliant. Thank you so much, and I really appreciate you taking the time today to talk to us. We've got a couple of slides left, and I propose we all stay on screen, and then if any other questions do come through, we'll pick the most relevant person to answer. What we've got to look at now is fees. So people will be thinking, yeah, it sounds interesting. What does it cost? How is it funded? Well, this is the overview. So if you study as an apprentice on the Senior Leaders Master's Degree Apprenticeship, the SLMDA, the funding is £18,000. That, however, is funded through the levy. So if you're a levy-paying organisation with levy funds still available, it comes out of that money which has been set aside for apprenticeships. So in effect, it's funded from the apprenticeship levy. So that comes through the apprenticeship pot, the Digital Apprenticeship Services, we call it, the DAS. The interesting thing is if smaller businesses do not pay the levy, they are able at the moment to contract directly with the government effectively to reserve and take up to 3 spaces. And that contribution is only 5%. So it's a deal of the century. And well, we know the things are going to change one way or another. Marianne talked about that earlier as well in her question. But for the time being, up until the end of this year, effectively, it's a 5% contribution. So what's that, £900 over 2.5 years for an MBA. The rest of it is contributed under the conditions of co-investment, where the levy funding in the system pays for the contribution. So as I say, if you're non-levy businesses, you're absolutely not ruled out of using this program. Some people say, I'd like to study this directly. I don't want my organisation involved. I'd like to do it based on work, but I want to do it on my own back. Maybe the organisation has expended all the levy or doesn't want to engage with it at the moment. It is possible to have direct entry onto it as well. And some people do that. The cost for that as a standard master's at the University of Lincoln at the moment is £12,600. Now that is less, but there's a reason why that's less. There's no portfolio because there's no endpoint assessment. So they don't get the portfolio support throughout. There's no access to levy funding throughout, so it's self-funded, but effectively you're not getting the wraparound provision and you won't get the apprenticeship standard at the end. You'll get MBA leadership and you'll be on the same journey broadly, but you don't need the portfolio, you don't need the 20% off the job training. It's just a different setup, but it's the same underlying pedagogy, teaching methods, and content. So hopefully that's clear. You'll be thinking then, if you're still interested, am I eligible to apply and what's the process? Well, really key thing I always say here, there's eligibility and there's suitability, and they're 2 separate things. It's got to be right for you. And Kimberley talked about the fact that she felt that it was the right time for her. That's really important. But in terms of eligibility, this is how it works. We've got a really robust application process. We have information sessions like this one, which is going to be recorded. Lots of information on the website as well. So if you Google SLMDA Lincoln, you'll find a whole page there. We've got inventory information. You need to be in a management role, at least 2 years experience and possibly more. And that experience has to be relevant. So to leadership, you don't necessarily have to be managing people, but managing and leading resources projects would be something that you might want to consider there. In addition, it's a government standard and it's also part of the university regs. You do need to have a level 2, that's English or Maths, GCSE or equivalent qualification. Now, some people say, I don't have that, I never had it, or I lost my certificates in my parents' loft 20 years ago. We can help you find those or generate, we have advice on how to get new certificates. Also, some people just choose to retake that level 2. With the experience they've now got across their career, it can be really quite a quick and painless thing to do, but you need it in place. And if you have those things, it's an application form. You need to complete a statement of intent, and you also need to have an academic interview. And that academic interview is with our very own Tracey White. And Tracey, do you want to just give an idea of what the academic interview is for those who may be a little bit daunted by that?
Yes, sure. So, as Martin's explained, and Kimberley, it's really important that the time is right for you. So all of that information that is out there, it's important to engage with it, to understand it. We have a range of forms, as Martin has said, and particularly if you're looking to come onto the SLMDA route, the forms are governed by the ESFA, and there's something called a skills scan, which you would be asked to complete, which is against the SLMDA standard. And we will send this pack out to you, and we've got guidance on there which you would complete, and then you're invited to this interview with your mentor. And through that interview, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to establish that you understand all about the senior leader master's degree, the rules of engagement, because we all three of us, your employer, yourself, and us as a university, are signing this commitment statement, which ensures that we understand everything and that we are going to commit our time and our energies and abide by the ESFA rules. So it's all about making sure that you understand the guidelines, the rules of engagement, that 20% has to be achieved throughout the duration of your degree, that the portfolio has to be built and engaged with. There are quarterly reviews that have to take place with the learner, the work-based mentor, and the portfolio support tutor. So it's quite an involved and engaged process, but it's all around the getting the learner, the apprentice, to the most successful outcome of passing the degree and the degree apprenticeship at the highest level that they can, and using their work and their learning as being one and the same. So it's all about demonstrating that understanding, or having some informed talks about what is expected, about identifying the real areas for development, whether the learner's got the right approach to the learning, whether they're motivated, whether they're dedicated, how they can see that they can fit in that work, life, study, family balance, and the understanding that all of those people around them, whether it's work colleagues or whether it's family, understand the work time, the study time, and the importance of the value of the degree apprenticeship for the learner, and identifying whether they're equipped with the study skills or whether there are areas where we need to help because often we have people who've been out of study for such a long time or have never engaged in higher education. So we need to ensure that we're aware of that and we can build in the support necessary. And we often provide resources in advance of coming onto the course so people can get themselves up to scratch before they come on. So it's not a grilling, it's more of a three-way conversation where we all understand and we know that it is the right it's the right course, it's the right level. We know what we need to do throughout the duration, and we know whether we need to put in any additional support mechanisms. And there's also, there's also an ESFA regulatory element to that, of making sure that that all of the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. So it should be an enjoyable experience. I certainly enjoy it, and there's nothing better than saying to people, yes, I'm delighted to offer you a place and I can't wait to see you on the course. It's a wonderful feeling.
Thank you, Tracey. That's brilliant. And I think that sums up the last three, which is suitability is key. So you can be eligible, and Tracey will ensure that the course is suitable for you and it's a good time for you to study. Now, warning here, we're moving towards the end of the presentation. So if you have any questions you've not asked and would like to, don't be shy, throw them into a comments box and we'll get back to you. Of course, this is recorded and can be watched back later. And the key thing is, if you are interested, please email us, mbaleadership@lincoln.ac.uk, mbaleadership@lincoln.ac.uk. If you send in your questions to that email address as well, we can answer them. But if you do send us a note, we will send out application packs based on your response. And you can return those to the same address. So effectively, it's all a virtual online application process. Next interviews will be virtual, pretty much guaranteed, I think, but likely to be over the next month, possibly into August. But it will be in the near future. And we're looking to induct and enroll and launch our 4th cohort on the 14th of September. So I don't think we've had any other questions come through. Just give that a moment. So all that remains for me to do is say thank you very much for joining us today. I hope you've had all the information you require to make that decision for yourself. Tracey, do you have any final thoughts? Throwing you on the spot.
No, just that I think Kimberley articulated really well the value that she's found and the value that her peers found. It really, really is an exciting and interesting and engaging program, of which all of who teach on it are so engaged, and due to this potential of the levy funding being withdrawn for the master's element of it, I would just really encourage anybody who is thinking about some further study around this area to just see if this opportunity at this time is the right one for them, and also to reach out to other people as well who it might be an opportunity for.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity. That is the word. And Kimberley, any final thoughts for the audience who tuned in today?
I don't think so. I very much echo what Tracey's just said. I just don't think there'll be another opportunity like this. So, I really strongly urge people to have those discussions with their employers. And yeah, if they're interested in finding out a bit more, if I haven't answered a question, I'm more than happy to be involved in providing answers further down the line if need be.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you very much, Kimberley. And it's been brilliant to have you on. I think it really shows, doesn't it, the authenticity of having somebody who's on it, not just the staff talking it through. If I had one more comment, Charlotte Curtin says, thanks very much, really helpful and inspiring. And that's probably down to Kimberley more than anyone else. So thank you very much. But Tracey, it's a pleasure to have you as always. Thank you very much. And we'll end the broadcast there. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.